Hi, I'm Alan Ross, and we are at Distributech 2025. We've got interviews with thought leaders, and we'd love for you to see what we've done here. Hey, thanks for joining us. My next guest is Audra Drazga. Audra and I have worked together. She's been with Energy Central. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But tell me a little bit about how you got into this whole power industry and why, and then a little bit about Energy Central.
Okay, sure. So my background is quite different. My degree is in pathogenic microbiology and chemistry.
Never mind. Yeah.
And I met my husband while I was finishing my last years of college. He's a lot older than me. His background was in business and marketing, and he got involved with Stone & Webster. If you remember Stone & Webster.
Yeah.
And then he went into EDS Management and Consultants, and he saw an opportunity in the power industry at the time that there was lacking of information. And so he started a news service. It was called Energy Central News Pro. It was a subscription service. We had satellites on our roof, and
Really?
And we had to get permission because if you remember in '95, most email from utilities was internal. It wasn't external, so you had to get permission to get our emails in. And he left EDS and he founded Energy Central, and then I followed along in 2000. So you can say I kind of fell into the industry. I originally thought I was going to be more in healthcare. And it's just kind of
It is healthcare. It's just healthcare.
It's different. It's if you think about how it runs, it's kind of like the digestive system of the body, right? Just different ways of working. And I just kind of fell into it and never looked back. And it's interesting because now I'll be driving to South Dakota or something, and I'm looking at the transmission line going, I wonder where that power came from. And I would never thought about that before.
Exactly.
So
I go by a substation, and I'm counting how many transformers are in there. You can always look at how big of a substation it is, but same thing. I never looked at that before. You both ended up selling that, right? Mm-hmm. And then you started Energy Central. What was Energy Central?
So my husband worked for EDS Management Consultants, and he started Energy Central. So that was our company. Energy Central started as a media company for the power industry. We went through what I would call 3 evolutions.
Okay.
So the first evolution was our paid news subscription service. Then in the early 2000s, we published 2 very successful print publications, Energy Biz Magazine and Intelligent Utility. Energy Biz was focused on the business operations of the utility, and Intelligent Utility was focused more on the digital aspects.
Okay.
And then we had several events that also wrapped around those publications. And then kind of around 2009, 10-ish, I don't remember the exact years, it's all a blur now, but we formed Utility Analytics Institute, which was kind of like a for-profit association for the industry, and was very specific around analytics in the utility industry at the time. And you could even argue today it's still an issue. How do utilities use and leverage their data?
Oh, yeah.
And in 2010-ish, it was a big issue. And so we formed this institute. The institute had several working groups. So we would bring utilities and vendors together to solve problems in these working groups. They met monthly. And then they would solve these problems, create these case studies, and then present them at our events. So we had 2 big events, one in the spring and one in the fall. And that's when we would kind of present the results of those working groups. So
That's excellent.
And that in itself became its own company, if you can imagine, very, very big. And so we sold that off to Informa in 2017. And then our next evolution happened where we created the community platform for Energy Central, which is what we were when we sold it to a company called Smooth Media.
I just got up. Wow. I didn't realize the background for Energy Central, because that is like an incredible pedigree. Data problems and getting utilities to talk about data problems it's still a problem today because they don't want to share anything with anybody.
Yeah.
They'll share with IEEE or they'll share with Seagrey, but not necessarily with each other.
And that's such a challenge. It's probably when we address the future of the utility industry. We can talk about that a little bit.
So you're a good person to ask this question. We are where we are now, and in the last 5 to 10 years, we've probably seen more change in this industry than in the 50 years before that. What changes, kind of from a macro level, do you think we've seen, and where are we today?
So I feel like this industry is through kind of a second generation of change. So if you remember in the early 2000s, it was deregulation.
Right.
And that's when we first started the company. And the industry was just booming then. That's what probably helped our company really, catapult into success because it was such a huge topic at the time. You could kind of equate that to like managed care and the healthcare arena when that came up and around. So I feel like the industry is on a next big evolution, equivalent, maybe even bigger than that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is the first ever. I feel like this is the second, but just maybe on a larger scale.
Okay.
So did that kind of help answer that question? You had a second part. Can you
Well, because that brings us up to where we are now.
Yep.
What's it going to look like 5 years from now? Because if you've got all of this information from people, they give you a hint about what they're working on. Is it just solving today's problems and just we're going to do more of it? Or is there something, is AI going to change everything?
So, it's kind of interesting you asked this question because for the last 20 years or so since I've been coming to Distributech plus years, the conversation's changed slightly, but it feels like it's always the same problems. The utility industry is lagging behind a lot of the other industries.
Right.
You heard it at the big keynote speech today.
Yeah.
It's not a sexy industry, so getting the younger generation to want to come into it, kind of still considered the dinosaurs. You even hear that sometimes where the dinosaurs were so far behind. Some of the smaller utilities are still on paper. And so for me, if you were even to talk 5 years, it'll be interesting because I think there's potential to see as we'll start seeing some incremental growth because AI is definitely bringing in technology that is going to enable some smaller companies to move faster and more agile. So I think we'll start seeing some more incremental increase in the industry. But it feels like it's still the same problems that it was 5 years ago. And it'll be interesting. I feel like we're probably going to be there in another 5 years. Same problem. How are we going to get power to all these new data centers that are coming in? If the new administration is able to bring in manufacturing back and et cetera, what's that going to do to power delivery? So I think the problem will still be in the arena of how do we get enough power for all these new tech, the data centers, EVs, all that's coming onto the grid.
Which creates, we've always looked at distribution. We kind of thought the transmission was pretty static, right? Big time.
Yeah.
Transmission is changing because now you're creating power.
Two-way.
Yeah. My son is a prosumer. He consumes electricity, but he sells it back in California, right? And he's very picky about how he does that. But he set up his house, his cars, his electric car, his solar on the rooftop, his battery system, so that he does not depend on Southern Cal Edison.
Yep.
And to an extent, they depend upon him. And that drives them nuts because taking power two ways ages the infrastructure.
Yep.
So
it wasn't built to do that.
Right. It's a different problem. It's a different solution to some of the same problems.
Yeah.
You mentioned the maybe 5 years from now, we're looking at the same thing. Will there be a weeding out, do you think, there's a lot of small players with technology advancements. Mm-hmm. And what you hear the utility saying is, I can't integrate 10 different solutions.
Yep.
I need you to speak one language. Mm-hmm. Is that going to weed these folks out, or are they going to just be bought up by the big three, or,
That's actually a really great question. That was also talked a little bit about at the main keynote.
It wasn't there, I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, that's all right. So they did cover a little bit of talking about that there's so many technologies coming in that the utilities just don't, and they don't all talk with each other. They don't integrate. I think there's a potential. I think a lot of these companies have come in, the smaller ones have come in with the intention of selling to the bigger companies and bringing systems that can integrate their capabilities into the bigger systems so that they can communicate with each other. So I definitely think you're going to see some consolidation for sure. So
Around that space, I'm very familiar with transformers and transformer monitoring. And right now, transformer monitoring systems have grown. I mean, they're monitored, you can monitor 23 different things on a transformer. And the problem has been, where does that data go?
yeah.
And then the next problem is, because of all of that, how do you diagnose from that data? And then because of that, who's going to make the decision? Because the expertise is gone.
Right.
So there's a labor issue that we've got here that whether that's a truck roll, having people that can do it from the skills trade to the engineer that can make decisions. You've seen that coming, because I know in Energy Central, that's talked about a good bit. Do you think there's a solution to that, or is just that the problem that we're always going to have? People is a problem.
I think people is a problem. I do think there's a potential as we understand AI more. There's potential for AI to fill in for some of that. However, keeping in mind that AI is only as good as the data it gets,
Right.
and also the people being able to manipulate the AI and know how to use it to make sure they get the accurate information.
Right.
As we become more proficient in that, I think we will see some incremental improvement in the area. My son this is a great conversation. He's getting ready to graduate from Colorado School of Mines in business engineering management system, and his emphasis is in data analytics, AI. And one of the things that he was telling me that he sees is going to be kind of this next generation. AI is kind of filling in for programmers because it can do a lot of their work.
Yeah.
But there's going to need to be the system engineers that know how to prompt it and make sure the data that they're getting out is correct. So I think if the utility industry is able to leverage that and make sure that they're getting the data in the right places and feeding it into these AI systems, I think we'll see exponential. And the labor issue, there'll still be some because we're not the sexy industry to go into.
Well, your son went into mining.
Well, the School of Mines has really become more engineering. You know, they were traditionally mines, but now they're engineering, civil, mechanical,
Right.
metallurgy. They're across everything, computer sciences. So
If he does a paper on the very thing that he was talking to you about, I will publish it. Because I'd love to get a perspective from his generation.
have them do
That's the way he's saying. I'd love that.
yeah, that'd be great.
Audra, thank you so much. It was great to do this with you. I
Yes,
appreciate it.
thank you, Ellen, for having me.